Welcome to episode 81,
Conflict and Accountability.
It's not the most sexiest topic, but, there we go.
But super important, I think, and something that is commonly used in our circle, as well as for me in my private relationships with family, my partner, and friends.
A really beautiful way of getting information about ourselves, about our interaction with each other.
And then doing with that information whatever fits for our boundaries and for our values.
Stay tuned. Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
Ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in every body and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
races,
and backgrounds.
With a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true, our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Welcome to episode 81.
Accountability and conflict.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not the sexiest of topics, but so necessary in interactions, et cetera, et cetera. So...
Yeah, so
we're diving in.
I'm gonna offer to our listeners to maybe take a breath and just dive in with us.
Yes, I'm gonna take a breath right now. It's hard for me because I'm congested because of allergies. But there we go. That was the best I could do. All right, but before we talk about accountability, and conflict, let's talk about what we've been doing since last we met.
So, is it okay if I go first?
I would love for you to go first.
So, my heart is a little bit tender, and I love that I am friends with you because I know I can bring this to you and have you hold it in a way that I think is just like really wholehearted. And it's that I have two mature trees in my backyard, and one was, we hired an arborist to have them cut it down, and for money reasons I didn't have the second one cut down because it wasn't hanging over my house. And so yesterday we cut it down, and I thought I had made peace with it, but my partner came into the kitchen holding a chainsaw and said, "Is there any rituals or things you need to do with the tree before I start chopping it down?" And I was like, "No, it's fine." And then he took a step towards the backyard, and I started to cry. And I was
starting to bawl right now.
And I was like, hold on. And so I ran into the backyard, and I just hugged it, and that is the tree that that's the tree that, that's the tree that we did the ritual near right after my divorce, and we buried things at the base. And so I just felt like that tree took so much for me and transformed it in the earth. And so I cried and I hugged it, and I'm just so grateful
for the
earth and for trees. And I imagine it feels somewhat like losing a family member. It just, my backyard feels different, and and like an energy is missing.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that with me. I know it's a transition. It's transition. Remember, it's like the death card. It's a transition, and I can't feel your pain because I don't know your pain, but I'm feeling pain just hearing about your pain. So I'm sorry.
Thank you for caring, because I feel like other people would be like, "Yes, you had whatever," but it is it hits.
It's a part. I mean, it's a part of maybe not your family per se, but it's a part of your life in that place, and an integral part. I mean, it's it's been there as long as you've been there.
Yeah, before I talked to them, I sat with them, I hugged them, I did magic with them.
Did you save any bits for
I did
a fire pit or something? Okay,
I did.
Good.
I definitely saved some.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
Thank you. Well, holding that. What about you?
Okay, well, mine is also about wood, but not quite as traumatic as yours. So we have a mutual friend.
Yeah. Yes.
Who has gotten a new toy for Christmas.
Okay.
And it's, I don't know what the name of it is, but it's like an engraver.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's the name of it. It's an engraver. And so she gave me some coasters. Well, first of all, so it's so wonderful to be seen and heard. We spent some time in New York together. And, we over the course of the week, we shopped in a number of different places. And one of the things that I remember telling her was that I have a problem with coasters because they serve a couple of functions. They keep something from damaging the furniture. And then, in my opinion, they should also absorb the liquid that the moisture that sometimes accumulates on the outside. So when you pick it up, you can drink your thing without having to worry about it. The coaster won't stick to the glass, or the moisture doesn't then drip down the front of your shirt and all that kind of, So I have like a love-hate relationship with coasters. Anyway, so she made some coasters for me with untreated wood so that the wood would soak the stuff. And can I read them? So she put some things that we've emailed to each other in the past. So first of all, in the back, I won't say it out loud, but they have like a little logo with her name on it.
Yeah, I love that.
And like a little brain.
I like the logos, so very them.
Yes. So this is one of them. Do you run? Yes. Out of patience, fucks, and money. That's one. Another one is cottywomple. And then how you're supposed to pronounce it. And it's it's a word, like it's in a dictionary. To travel purposefully towards an as yet unknown destination. And it's it's an English slang. But the picture of it is the Fool.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that is the Fool.
It is the Fool.
Isn't
that amazing that she engraved this on a wooden coaster? Isn't that amazing?
That's cool.
That's cool. So, I mean, I feel so seen.
Yeah.
So, and then there's another one. You're what the French call les incompetents, which is, I guess, the incompetence. I don't know. Anyway, so there is that one. And then here's a love. This one is perfect. I feel so seen. I came, I saw, I forgot what I was doing, retraced my steps, got distracted on the way back, have no idea what's going on, and now I have to pee. That is so me. Okay. And then this last one, not the last one, next to the last one. Be that girl who roots for the other girls, tells a stranger her hair looks amazing, and encourages other women to believe in themselves and their dreams. Yes, that.
Yes, that.
And then this is another one. She's emailed to me before, or texted to me before. I talk an awful lot of smack for someone who tips over when putting on their underwear. Aren't these amazing? And so it's a wonderful, these are wooden coasters in a little wooden coaster tray, untreated wood, so it absorbs, and I just love it. And I feel so seen.
I think that's my favorite part, is that she listened to something very practical, but that also those quotes and images shows me that she's listening to y'all's relationship.
I know. Isn't it wonderful? It's a gift that says a lot more than the gift itself.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I love that.
Yay.
Aww.
Yes. So anyway.
Well, I love maybe starting with that moment of like seeing each other and being connected, because today we're going to be talking about accountability and conflict. And to me, I think that's a really great way to start talking about how conflict just occurs when humans are together.
Yeah, and it's inevitable. It's inevitable unless two people are the exact same people, which it's not. We've just said they're not, right?
Right.
And even if you are the same person, I mean, I have conflicts with myself, so there's always going to be conflict. There's always going to be periods or times when two people will not see the same thing. They might experience at the same time, but they won't have the same reaction or response or interpretation. Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about accountability and conflict, what it is, if seeking accountability in conflict is even something we should do, and then how that happens in our communities, both in our witchy and mundane communities, and also some of the ways we have worked out within our community of handling accountability and conflict.
I'm sorry, sidebar. You are such a teacher. You just gave us the anticipatory
I
set.
did.
You shared with us the outline of what we're going to take care of, and then what what some of our outcomes might be.
Yes. So. And there'll be a quiz.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So the idea that we put in the outline that humans are imperfect, and so and I wonder if that's, I don't know if it's a matter of perfection or imperfection. I just think that no matter, when you have two people who, like I said, their interpretation of things are just going to be different, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the imperfection part of it comes in how they deal with that kind of difference, right? And as we are living at this moment, and it doesn't matter when you're listening to this, because whenever you're listening to this, there's conflicts going on all over the place. We're reading about it in the news. We're experiencing it in our home lives, probably, in our personal interactions. So let's dive in and talk a little bit more about this.
Let's do that.
Yes.
Let's do that. So one thing I wanted to start with, and this was and is a huge learning for me, is just this concept that intent is different than impact.
Oof.
And let me tell you, when I first heard that, I heard that in a circle, the one that you and I have visited mm-hmm. and practiced with out in California. I heard that and it hit me like a gut punch mm-hmm. because I had used intent as almost like an emergency, like evacuation hatch, like the red button that I pressed.
Yeah.
Like if things didn't go my way or the way I thought it should, mm-hmm. or someone got upset, mm-hmm. I'd be like, well, my intent was good. Well, I was just trying to help, or, well, I just saw this, or, well, I think that, I was mm-hmm. just trying to be whatever, and I thought that meant like, well, okay, like, I'm sorry that I hurt you, and like, it wasn't my intent. So like, let's just take some steps back.
I like that. Let's just take
and so what that meant is that I was using my intent as a way of negating the fact that I had made whatever my impact was. Mm-hmm. And what I learned and am learning is, like, that's a helpful information. And that also is not, that's secondary to what my impact is.
What the impact is. Yeah. And, I think, and that tendency, I mean, that, here's the thing. I'm in my own little world. That's why I say if there's two people, there's going to be two different viewpoints of the same thing. If there's 5 people, it's probably going to be 5, or maybe a couple of people share the same thing. But the idea is that we're all in our own little worlds, our own little bubbles, and we see things a certain way. And so the natural tendency, I would imagine, for many people, because I know when you're saying that, it's the same for me, is to say, but that's not what I meant. Mm-hmm. Well, but yeah, and uh-huh. the point is that this person was either harmed or they, felt something different or whatever, and that was the impact, regardless of what I meant the impact to be. That was the impact. So then what do we do? Well, I'm glad you're here because we're going to tell you some of the things that we've done. How's that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You brought this up earlier, but as people, we're complicated. Mm-hmm. Like we have diverse experiences. So we're bringing up, whenever I am coming into a shared space where I'm going to bump into people, whether it's a grocery store or a circle, I'm bringing with me my own belief system, my own trauma, my own history, my own style of relationship, mm-hmm. my own attachment style.
Wow.
Like I personally am complex. Mm-hmm. And so I'm bringing all of that with me. And I'm bumping into other people who are also just as complex.
Yes. And it's what I find I love about people who are thinking in these ways, these very intentional, meaningful ways, is that it's kind of it's an opposition to how we're encouraged to think about things, where I'm a Black woman, or I'm a 65-year-old woman, or I'm a woman, you know mm-hmm. what I mean? And so to take kind of like one essential part and then aim your marketing towards that, or talk towards mm-hmm. that, or assume someone's going to respond because of that. And so as we think about accountability and think about impact, one of the parts of the processes is that, well, in at least as we experience it, is that recognition that a person is this huge complex, combination of experiences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and learning. And recognizing that there's absolutely no way I can know what all of that means to you. Mm-hmm. And so I have to open myself to the possibility that I will never know you. But I can still through, intentional, thoughtful, meaningful interaction, still have a relationship with you.
And I think people can hear that and have many reactions, but two that I'm thinking of are, well, if everyone is a vast universe of complexity, then we should just give everybody some slack and like not hold anyone accountable at all. Or the opposite. Everyone just needs to get over their stuff and just do what they're supposed to do.
Whoa.
And I think like both are true and neither are true. And like, and whether we're in a circle together or we're bumping into each other at a grocery store, holding those truths, and I'm a witch, so I feel like I can hold the paradox. Yeah, I can hold that paradox. And I can love someone, and I can also love someone and hold a boundary, and I can love someone and forgive. It's complex.
It's very complex.
So maybe as one last pitch before our listeners maybe dive off because they're like, this is not sexy. One last pitch is conflict. I would like to postulate that conflict can be good.
Yes. Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I agree.
So I think conflict shows that we are being in proxy to each other. Conflict shows that I care, and so if you and I are together and I'm experiencing a conflict with you, I have some sort of investment in you. Otherwise, I would just be like, whatever, and walk away, right?
Right.
But because I care about you, I'm going to be invested in, my feelings will be hurt. Like, if I didn't care about you and you didn't do what you said, well, like, whatever, but like the conflict, the feelings of that conflict, whatever's underneath that is a reflection of the fact that there is value, there may be value here.
It's like so so you have gone, not mining, but
crystal digging.
That's
Yes.
right. So you've seen those the stone tumblers. Have you seen? So Marianne Williamson, do you know who? Okay, Marianne Williamson has this. She uses this metaphor, allegory, whatever. One of those things where something stands for something else. And she when you're in relationship with someone, people think, oh, they're my soulmate. We're going to be like la 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 la, happy. She said, no. Two soulmates are thrown in a stone tumbler, and they rub each other's rough edges off. So goodness. when you're in relationship with someone, things are going to happen where you're going to be rubbing off each other's rough edges.
What a shift in expectation, and like what a shift in like what I would value. Thank you for helping rub my raw edges.
My pleasure. My pleasure. But
goodness.
Isn't that, so when people, to be honest, it's not going to make you feel better at the time.
Well, no, that's
you're not
painful and irritating.
Yes, my rough edges are being right. No, you're like, God damn it.
Yeah.
But, later, or maybe sometimes in the middle, and maybe that'll help with the shift, that just a reminder of, conflict is going to happen, and conflict can be good.
Yeah.
And sit in that for a moment.
Yeah. I think conflict can be good. It strengthens it can help strengthen relationships. I know after I've gone through some really hard scenarios with people that I love, I've come out the other side and really valued them.
Yes. It can be hugely strengthening to a relationship, and just in terms of your own personal growth, my personal growth. So okay. So we talked about conflict, and conflict. What would you say the relationship of conflict and accountability? Because we're moving into accountability now. So what would you say, and if you want to, what the relationship of conflict and accountability is?
So conflict happens, and then accountability would be being willing and able and open to meeting about that, and then accepting whatever amount of responsibility is appropriate for that impact.
Thank you.
That's how I would. I just made that up on the fly. I didn't know you were going to ask me that.
Okay,
but that's me on the fly.
Yeah. So that was your quiz.
Yes.
You don't know. Yeah, no, I think of too as the process of dealing with conflict. I mean, accountability, okay, and sometimes it's adjacent, right? But that idea of thinking about accountability and thinking about the ways in which we're being accountable to each other and holding each other accountable is the process by which we start to transmute conflict into relationship building or something like that. Yeah, alchemically. So we talked about the difference between conflict and accountability. Let's see if we can kind of hammer that down just a little bit, or be a little bit more explicit. And so, what would you say is, or maybe I should take a turn.
Sure. Well, why don't you hop in and then I'll jump in afterwards.
Okay, that'd be great. So to me, accountability is an acknowledgement of the extent with which I'm in alignment with agreements, and recognizing when I'm not in alignment, and then my decisions about what my next steps are.
I would say yes. I mean, okay. I could reword that but I would be saying the same thing.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. And so, whenever you say that, I'm really hearing a lot of like curiosity, openness to other people's experiences.
Ooh, yes.
Outside of yours, and a willingness to listen and to be open to understanding.
I think that's so perfect, because I guess I could have an agreement with myself, but in relationship, an agreement means that that we agree on something, and to know that we need to talk, and to know that we need to hear each other's values, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I love that.
I love that too. And so whenever I am the one who is wanting to bring about a conversation, maybe because something was said or done, and I want to clarify. If I'm thinking that the person I'm coming to is holding what you just said, then I'm going to. It's that I know for me, it really helps me show up in a way where I can drop my defensiveness or even allow you to see that like I was angry, or I am angry, but I'm also really hurt, and I was scared, or I was really sad or lonely. But it creates this opportunity for vulnerability, or it cultivates further an opportunity for vulnerability. And then that is fertile ground for closeness and reconnection. And so I think we have these agreements in relationships, in community. And just as a side note to our listeners, when I talk about relationship, I'm actually not even referencing romantic relationship, although that is one type of relationship. But any sort of relationship we have, whether that be people in circle together, people who work together, people who are in romantic, family relationship, whatever.
I also like to extend that to, I'm in relationship with my government. I'm in relationship with my neighborhood.
And I'm even in relationship to the person who's checking me out at the grocery store, who's bleeping my stuff,
The agreements will change,
yes.
will vary.
Yeah.
And many of them are tacit, many of them are unsaid, but they exist.
Well, and I think that's the big point to make here is that whenever I'm in relationship when I come into relationship with people, that we have agreements, whether they are implied or explicit. And first of all, that can be where a lot of the snags come, is that maybe I think it's explicit, but I'm like, well, why are you being an idiot? Like everyone should know that. Well, like we haven't talked about it.
That's exactly.
It's actually implied. So
and sometimes we assume that it's an agreement.
Yeah. Right.
So
yeah. And so that can be where a lot of things happen, where our rough edges come up against each other, because it either needs to be clarified, we need to make it explicit, or we would both benefit from making it explicit. And so I think that's a really great place to start with, is like, is it implied or is it explicit?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think I've talked about the fact that I've grown through. I'm a recovering passive aggressive personality, and so with passive aggressive people, there's a lot of agreements that aren't really agreements. There are a lot of understandings on various people's part that are not actually held by the other person. So. And things can get messy. and things can get, and depending on how that's handled, it could be, again, it could still be a relationship growth opportunity, or it could just be, a disaster.
Just speaking of that, because I personally think that Ted Lasso is life. I love Ted Lasso so much.
The philosopher.
I do. Yes, the great philosopher, Ted Lasso. But one of my favorite parts of that show is the relationship between the club owner, Rebecca, and this younger woman who works in advertising.
Oh, yes.
And PR.
Yes.
Her name's Keely.
Yeah, Keely.
And one of the reasons I fell in love with that show early on was in one of the first few episodes, the Keely, the one female character, is having issues with her relationship, and the older woman, which I love, the intergenerational friendship of women who help each other is, I think, awesome in that show. But the older woman says, well, is he accountable? Accountability is important. And I think that was a real pivoting point for her character at the beginning of the show, for considering like, oh, I deserve accountability and people should be accountable. Like, it just, in my mind, it kind of blew up the way her brain was working, and it totally pivoted her character. And then I fell in love with the show, and it continued to. I think it continued to be wonderful.
And you shared with other people who also then fell in love with the show, who then shared with other people who also fell in love with the show. I love it. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, no, that idea, as we think about this, that can be just articulating for myself, this is how I feel, and this is what I think should be happening in this relationship. Now, is that valid or not? And is a wonderful opportunity for growth, and can then help in the next steps, which are, okay, now what does this look like when I'm in relationship with this other person or this government or whatever? So, yay!
So let's talk about, is seeking accountability worth it?
You want the long or short answer?
Well, we do have a podcast, so I guess it can be somewhere in the realm of an hour.
So, yeah. Okay, so here it is. In my opinion, yes, that's the short answer. Yeah, it's worth it. Because why am I bothering? Why am I spending time with you if it's not for growth, if it's not for fun, if it's not for enjoyment? I mean, it could be just like, I don't know, rubbing body parts against each other, and then the next day we don't see each other, but even then, there's some accountability. I mean, there's always accountability. But anyway, okay. So that's my short answer is yes. But the long answer is there are times when I don't know if it's safety or, boundary issues where the process of holding someone accountable is not going to be worth it. Either the friendship isn't worth it. It could be actually unsafe to try to make them not make them, but to try to get them to see how what agreements are being played out in our relationship, whether we want to or not. I'm trying to think what else. What are your thoughts?
I would agree with you. I think that more often than not, I think seeking accountability is worth it. Even in those painful moments where I've sought accountability and things haven't worked out the way I was hoping, on the bigger picture, I appreciate that through that process, I came to understand that our values, our expectations that aren't matching up. And so as painful as that it may be, it's good for me to know so that I can set boundaries and, maybe adjust the trajectory of what I thought our relationship was going to be.
So even in that case, this is me playing the devil's advocate, but even in that place where the accountability is not worth it in relationship with that person, in relationship with yourself, you're still valuing accountability. I mean, let me eye reference. And I would still, if in that relationship, if we decided to part ways, etc., because our agreements are not aligning, then I would still be holding myself accountable for my safety and my autonomy and etc. So accountability is still there.
I agree. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Even there.
I think too, I would also check in with myself. I've had to do this a lot where I check in and say, like, what am I expecting? Am I just trying to be right? Am I just trying to show this person that they're wrong and that I'm right? And like, while that may be true in some state, like, I want them to understand their impact. If I'm just trying to like point out how they suck and how I'm great, like, that may not be a good place to like initiate this sort of healing or reconnecting. One other thing I wanted to point out, this is a pet peeve of mine. Similar to when people assume that I'm Wiccan. Like, it's just a pet peeve of mine. And these poor people who just, they say it and then they don't know that 3,000 people have said it before, and it just rubs me. So, but it's when people are like, I don't like conflict. Duh.
Well, no, there are some people who like conflict.
Right? Yeah, there are. But I would say that, like, most people, most reasonable people do not.
Yeah.
So if we could just, like, that'd also be like saying, like, the sky is blue. I understand that. Like, let's take a step forward.
Yeah.
Like, most people don't like conflict. And so that's really, like, yes, welcome to being human. But it's uncomfortable. It's vulnerable. But if we are going to be in community with each other, then this is a skill that I think is really valuable to practice.
It's I mean, yeah, it's very valuable. Yeah, it's very valuable. I mean, I just think that, yeah, it's one of those things where you put on your big girl panties and you say, I don't like conflict, and this is the conflict, and this is what we're going to do. Like, okay, thanks for sharing.
And one of the ways I assess that is I think I play it through in my head. Is it worth it? What will be the outcome if I handle this with this person versus I don't?
Ooh, right.
And of those two scenarios, because if it's the person who is giving me my burger at Burger King and I don't like the way that they're addressing me, is it worth it? I mean, I could see maybe, or I could also just be like, you know what, like he's calling me sweetie. I don't really like that, but okay.
Yeah, I don't want him to spit in my burger.
But yeah, like I'm just going to take my burger or whatever. But like, I'm going to make that assessment and then I'm going to move forward.
Oh, right. It's not worth it.
Yeah, maybe that's not worth it. But then maybe like in our relationship, like I would make that assessment and I would be like, okay, it probably is worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, so we have, we have a relationship and something happens where, we're not in alignment with our agreements. And I would guess, no, okay, I'm not going to guess. I'm going to think back to the last time that happened for me. Okay, you were talking about people who are conflict averse. I actually didn't deal with it. So the very last time that I remember this came up, I just said, fuck it. And I wonder what would have happened had I actually said, this is totally unacceptable. Let's talk about this or whatever. But yeah, I didn't. What about you? When was the last time that something like this happened, and how did you respond?
The last time this happened was a couple weeks ago, which is why I asked to do the episode.
So is this kind of like your therapy?
It kind of is like coming out the other side and being like, I want to talk about this. How did it go? I feel like I learned some things that I could do better. One of the to quote myself directly, one of the things I said was, that's not the person that I want to be. Behaving like that is not the person that I want to be. And I apologized. But I think it went in, I came out the other side, and this is, I think, what's really important and what I've had to come back to in order to really feel peace is I came out the other side and I said, my behaviors overall are a reflection of who I do want to be. And I feel an integrity with that. And while I wasn't perfect, and I don't think that's really possible as a human, I am proud of who I showed up as. And the people who I choose to continue to stay connected to, I also am in alignment with how they showed their values and how they were accountable. And so I'm going to choose to stay connected to those people and to the people who, through this process, I discovered hold different values and want to be at a different level of accountability. As sad as I am to lose them, I am grateful that we went through this process and that we talked it out. and I'm sad, but I think that's a part of life is the ebb and the flow, literally the close and the receding of different relationships, and not all of them are long term. So they have seasons, and so I do hold grief about it. So I don't want to come out. I don't want to make it sound like I came out and everything was, and there were rainbows and unicorns were farting, like rainbows across the sky. You know, like no, it was hard. And I feel grateful for the process.
It's one of the things that I keep reminding myself. It's kind of like when we were talking about feedback, it's still information, and it's information that I can make a part of me and help me as I move forward. And it's still painful, I would imagine. And it's still, it disrupts your life. I mean, you're literally ripping someone from your life.
Yeah. As you say that, I'm thinking of pictures. Like I like a tradition I have for myself is I put up pictures all year long, and then at the end of the year, January 1st, sometime at the beginning of January, I take all those pictures down for the year, and then I put them in. I don't want to say scrapbook because that makes it sound like I put way too much energy. It's just like a book that I like paste things into. So,
like individually or like a collage?
A lazy person's collage. Maybe there's 3 or 4 pictures on a page.
Okay, gotcha.
And as I was taking down the pictures, I was like, wow, there are some people in these pictures that are no longer going to be in pictures next year. And that that sense of grief and sadness, that sense of appreciation and gratitude, that even though things didn't work out in the way that I had hoped, at least they were willing to go through that process with me. And then, wishing them well and hoping for the best for them and loving what we had, proud of myself for holding boundaries. It's just a big, messy mixture.
Right. So I'd love to hear, you said that you were grateful that they went through the process with you. And are we talking about an informal process, or are we talking about a more structured process of conflict resolution? Yeah,
so I think that's a great question. So maybe we could take this conversation we're having and tie it into a conversation also about like the air quotes steps of conflict resolution. Okay. Is that okay?
One of the things that I found so useful, and you brought it to our group, was this structured way of offering feedback. I mean, it's conflict resolution, but it's also offering it's information. It's offering information, but it's also offering how the information that's tendered, how those situations impacted the people involved. And I think that that's super important, that we realize that there's an event, and then there's all of these reactions to that event, which are going to vary depending on the person, and then sharing that with each other so that we can feel seen and heard.
I love that you say that, because I think calling it, and oftentimes it's called conflict resolution if anyone Googles it, but I think that title is really limiting, because I think it's actually, so I learned this process at a summer camp that I started working at around 2002. I've talked about it on the show before. And I learned it there, and I have just used it in so many areas of my life that are not direct conflicts.
Wow. Even
down to, I used it as a way for me to talk to a student who wasn't working on their essay. Back when I was an English classroom teacher. It's just a good way to say stuff.
Yeah, yes, I remember. Yes, I love that. And it really it's a way of clarifying and putting a lot of intent into what we say. I know often I'm very sloppy or careless, or just what I mean, that kind of stuff. And with this process, it actually demands of me an authentic. It demands that some people do and don't answer those demands or not, but it demands of me this authentic sharing of that can be very vulnerable about my reaction to something that happened.
Yeah, as you say that, I'm thinking about how many times I have chosen to not share what I really want because of that vulnerability. And then I consciously or unconsciously just hope it's going to happen. And then
passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Girl.
And then the number of times that I've been upset that it didn't happen when I didn't ask.
I'm the mayor of that town. I'm the mayor and every member of the council. And I also sweep the streets. So yeah, so I get it. So let's talk about it.
Okay, so if any person Googles conflict resolution steps, there's like a million different resources, and there can be like 3,000 steps, or there can be 3 steps. You know, it just really depends. So I've boiled it down to my favorite, just like 5, and I've done this so much that I can get it down to where I can address the student as I walked by their desk and didn't even stop. You know, like, so it can be that short. Now I don't
like in one sentence or something.
Yeah, just like, you know, as I'm walking by their desk, like I can say it. Or it can take hours. You know.
And we've been in formal processes that have done that.
Have done weeks, months, to move through the process. So it just depends. But I would say that they all have value, but just the method that you're doing and the outcome that you're seeking may determine the complexity. But the steps for me, really briefly, is ask permission or set up a time. Hey, is now a good time to talk? And if they say, if they're busy, because, you know, if they're on their phone or they're landing a plane, you know, it might not be a good time. You know, that might not be a good time to talk. Or maybe, or even things that we can't. Maybe they're sick. Maybe they're on allergy meds that are cause them to be like hardly be able to think straight. You know, so giving that grace so you can set up a time to talk, and it doesn't have to be like a huge deal, but it can just be like, hey, you know, do you have like 5 or 10 minutes so we could chat? And yes or no, and then if they say no, set up a time. Easy smeezy.
Yeah. It can be, yes.
Yes. Also, this is a great time because if they say no and they always say no, that might be a good time to reassess whether or not this process is...
right. Yeah. If you can't get past the first step.
If you can't get past the first step, then there we have a conflict of agreements on what
we have is a failure to communicate.
Yeah. And, you know, if they always say no, then maybe it's like, sounds like talking with me is not a priority to you. So you might notice that we're going to spend less time together.
Wow. I'm good. Well, fortunately recording this so I can write this all down later. Okay.
Because I've actually had it where somebody doesn't get past step 1. Like, okay.
That's also information.
That is.
Wow. Huge.
The second one is, and this is, sometimes I do this and sometimes I don't, which is to validate the relationship. So if this is if I'm working with, if I have something to say to the checkout person, it might not be as important at the grocery store. But if it's someone like you, like you are so important to me, and I really want to make sure that I'm able to show up heart open and vulnerable to you. Whenever we sit together. So I really wanted to chat with you.
Oh, I love that so much.
So like that, you know, instead of being like, ya bitch.
Okay, yeah, thank you for helping me to refine my behavior.
Yeah, because, you know, if people are upset and they come in with guns blazing, you know, I'm going to pull away. So this is a way of validating the relationship, is to help calm down and open the heart.
Oh,
that might also mean I've taken some time between whenever the thing happened and when we talk.
Gotcha.
Then the next one is, so these three, step 3, 4, and 5 can actually go in the same sentence, but it's I feel, then a feeling word, when you, observable behavior, and what I want is specific ask. And people could write entire essays about this, but I feel, and then feeling word, a feeling word, and there's a lot of like, you know, Brene Brown, we in our discussion, talked about, is anger a feeling word? And I always ask for people to dig underneath what's partnered with or under that anger. So like, I feel angry, pissed,
frustrated.
Like those are all synonyms. You know, people are really good with synonyms for angry, but I would seek something more vulnerable.
You have given us like feelings charts, which have been really, really helpful.
Google, and I would tell our listeners, Google a feelings chart. They're wonderful. They help me. Or there's even a wheel of feelings, which I really love because I love organization. So I love charts. So
yes, you do.
A wheel of feelings. When you observable behavior, so like we're a bitch, or acted like an ass, or fucked me over. Like those aren't...
Are those not observable behaviors?
Well, I would say to me, they feel observable. We want to be really specific. Like, we're 15 minutes late to pick me up. Or,
You were flirting with the girl.
Yeah, like you touched the other girl's arm and asked her if she wanted a ride home.
That's specific.
That's more specific than even flirting.
Gotcha.
I wasn't flirting.
Gotcha.
Thank
you.
Yeah, I was just being helpful.
Oh, okay.
So if you touched her arm and you asked her if she wanted to ride home, so being super specific in that way, because then we can get to what's really important and not caught in the details. I wasn't flirting. Don't say that I was flirting.
Gotcha.
And then what I want is, and then something very, very specific. So not to, so something that what I want is for you to be a better person, for you to actually follow through with what you say you're going to do. So those aren't super specific. What I want is for you to spend the first 15 minutes of a time whenever we're at a group party, just with me as we talk to people.
Oh,
like that's specific.
Yes. Wow.
What I want is for you to share your feelings about what restaurant we're going to go to instead of just saying it's fine, whatever I want. I want you to pick 3 restaurants.
So can I, one of the things that strikes me about this is that even in the process of me articulating my hurt, what I, why I was hurt and what I want, it's actually giving, it's forcing me to sit for a moment instead of just feeling hurt or angry or whatever and being more precise, right? So instead of me just, oh, he's a shit, I'm good, son of a bitch, blah, blah, blah. Okay, why do I think he's a shit? And, okay, that's not, okay, let's be more specific. And that's giving me a lot of information about myself. It has nothing to do with that person. I mean, it does, but you know what I mean? But it gives me a lot of information about myself because now I know what exactly I'm reacting to. And I can say, well, why is that? Because it reminds me of my, my former boyfriend who always was sleeping with my best friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe it's totally fine. This is a totally made up situation.
Yeah.
Maybe it's totally fine that he touched her elbow and asked to offer her a ride home. I don't know. I'm just making things up. But maybe that's totally fine. And maybe it's that, like you said, the previous relationship. But maybe through this discussion, we can understand that and the partner can understand like, oh, so these things are triggering for her because of her previous experiences. Okay, that's really good information to know. He may not change the behavior because the behavior might not need to be changed, but now he has more information.
Exactly.
Instead of me just giving the silent treatment for a week and then we break up.
Wait, first of all, I feel so seen because that describes my 20s. Oh my gosh. Oh, where were you when I was, well, you weren't born yet. That's where you were. That's where you weren't. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so wise.
So this process could take an hour. It could take 15 minutes. It can also take 30 seconds. Like when I walked by my student's desk, I skipped asking permission because I was the teacher. So now I was going to say it. Validate relationship. Well, I'm the teacher. I'm not going to say anything. But I said, oof, I'm feeling really worried whenever your entire paper is blank. And what I really want is for you to pass this class. So we only got 15 minutes left. Okay. And then I kept walking.
Oh, you're such a wonderful
Like,
teacher.
what is there to argue with? You don't want me to pass this class. I didn't challenge.
You were very specific.
I didn't say you were a lazy student who's listening to your music instead of, you're going nowhere. And I didn't, I said I was worried. Observable behavior. Your paper is empty, You're
sitting there picking your nose.
Right?
Yeah.
I didn't say you're not working. I said your paper is empty. That's observable.
Oh my gosh, that's I love you so much. I wish I could just carry you in my head, and I would just move my mouth, but your voice would come out, or your words would come out. And that was so. You're right. It was perfect for that occasion, at least to my eyes, and really, really precise. And the student can then, you just gave them information. And they can say, well, fuck you. I don't care what you want.
Right.
Or they could say, she's a pretty good teacher and she usually knows what she's talking about. So maybe I should put something on this page.
Yeah.
But you gave them a whole lot of information about you and them, and you, about your reaction to them, and you didn't say they were horrible. You weren't, from what I could tell from your conversation, you were not making judgments about, there we go, that's the word, judgments. You were not making judgments. You were being really clear. Oh, that's wonderful.
Thank you. And then some other things that can be really helpful with the process are practicing the skill of mirroring back between each part or each sentence. Mirroring back would be that if you were saying that to me, then I would say it back, probably in my own words. And then I would be open to hearing if I got it right. And I cannot tell you the number of times where I've been listening and I hear what they say and then I repeat it back and I wasn't even on the dartboard.
They're like, no.
That's not what I said at all. Because, go back to the very beginning of our conversation, I'm bringing all of my previous experiences, all my trauma, all my hang-ups, all my issues with attachment, all these things. And so I may not hear them.
Right.
So that's a good time for me to, did I get that right? And then they're like, no, I'm going to say it again. Okay. I'm going to listen again. And then we try it again.
And to me, that is such an important part of any relationship, because again, like we say, there's two people there bringing all their trauma, their triggers, their background, their experiences, etc. And just getting to that point where we can actually say the same words for a couple of minutes and know that we mean the same thing is actually a miracle when you think about it. I mean, it's really a blessing, and it's so rare in in my experience that two people can use the same words and mean the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So and one of the things I participated in a couple of these formal processes with people in our circle, and that I found that mirroring back was an opportunity for me to drop myself, take myself out of the equation and just really super listen to another person. And I know in my day-to-day interactions, I don't give myself or the other person in my conversation that grace that often. It's usually really fast, and I'm trying to interpret what they're saying based on my stuff instead of me just being there and listening, deeply listening.
Oh my gosh. How many times am I thinking before you're even done talking what I'm going to say? Or I think I know what you already said and I've judged it and I've moved forward, or tuned you out.
Or I'm agreeing with you. Oh yeah, I know exactly.
Yeah. Like, I'm not even done with my point yet,
Yeah. Again, like I said, it's not a cultural value. It's not something we're taught anywhere in any of our, in elementary schools. We're not taught to deeply listen. So that's another part where I think this is such a radical honesty, and participating in this with someone can be such a really, elevating experience, a spiritual experience in some cases.
Well, maybe you kind of touched on this a little bit. Maybe we could tell, I don't want to say tell stories because, I don't want to break confidentiality. But, maybe we could share the impact of our experiences with conflict and accountability in our lives and in our families and maybe in our circle. So,
I'm going to actually share an experience where there was someone who was breaking boundaries, breaking agreements, and breaking down boundaries as well, right, left, and center. And they actually thought that they were trying to be helpful. And they were just so awkward about it, in terms of, I'm not going to go too much into the behaviors, but to the point that a number of people noticed. And when we sat down and talked with this person, they were appalled because that was not their intent. They thought that they were being super, super helpful. They didn't realize that they were being intrusive. They didn't realize that they were making other people uncomfortable by their presence and by the way they were actually behaving. And it was humbling for them. And this person literally stopped and said, I don't even know what to say. And said, can we carry on this conversation? Do you mind if we stop now and let me just sit with this for a bit? And I remember asking, are you sure? Because I really didn't want to leave them in that kind of I'm a shit type of thing.
Yeah.
But they insisted. And then we picked it up the next day, and they said, they thanked me profusely. And they said, I had no idea. And and they said, how can I have no idea now what to do.
Yeah.
So we kind of, we talked a little bit more, and I said, I can't talk for other people, but I can tell you about my experience in relationship and interaction with you. And they were so open to learn. I mean, once I kind of like ripped the scales from their eyes, they kind of went, it was kind of like that dark night of the soul. They kind of sat with that for like 24 hours. And I don't know if that's necessarily healthy or not, but in this case, they were able to just kind of sit with that and sit with that information. And I thought it was incredibly authentic of them, really, a really powerful opportunity for them to just say, I thought I was doing I was doing the best I could, and now I don't know what to do, because that was what I thought would be helpful in that situation. And then we talked about that, and they were just so grateful. And, I haven't seen them, I haven't been in any sort of deep interaction with them since, so I don't know how much of it they're taking to heart, but it seemed like they were really, okay, let me think about this, and what do I need to do here? And I said, well, stop for a second and just, if you can, step outside of yourself and then look at what the picture you're presenting, So anyway, this is a lot of detail, but the point I just wanted to make is that this was one of those opportunities for growth that was taken. And I've been in these processes a couple of times, and sometimes they go super, super well, like this, really, really sweet. And both of us, our hearts are cracked wide open and beating together and all that sort of stuff. And then sometimes when people kind of, they're bullshitting. Mm-hmm. So anyway, but I've loved this process. I've loved being able to come out on the other side with someone.
The thing I really love as I listen to you, I hear you and probably the other people, because I think you used plural, other people who brought this up were heart open. Mm-hmm. And then the person receiving was also. And then because of that vulnerability on both sides, growth and change could happen. And that is just so powerful.
It was, I was on the verge of tears, like, throughout most of our conversation, because they were so willing to step outside of themselves and get out of, that's not what I meant, and move towards, okay, now first of all, how can I, their big thing was, okay, can I make it better? How can I make this better for the people who I harmed? And then they said, okay, now how can I keep from doing this again in the future? Mm-hmm. Which is, would have been something that I would have recommended our talking about, but they leaped there.
Yeah. How restorative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Just hearing that, I'm like, who's this person? I want to be friends with them.
I know. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Because I feel like I've been there. Mm-hmm. As the well-intentioned person who's just like burning things down,
right, left and center. It's like, okay, all right, there was a lot of ash around here.
Yeah. Wow.
And then there have been cases where we've gone through this process with someone who, so particularly at that mirroring. So when someone says that, I feel blah, 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 because, and that mirroring back part just went on and on and on, because they could not step out of themselves to listen vulnerably. And so I think that's kind of where we stalled. Mm-hmm. And then we kept trying to set up another, because it would take forever. And then we kept trying to set up another time, and it just didn't work. Mm-hmm. It just didn't work. They were just unwilling to they were unwilling to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a really great demonstration of, like, sometimes this process reveals where that person is, what is available to them. And if what is available to them doesn't meet where I am, then
it's unfortunate, but yeah.
Yeah. So then that may be the evidence that I needed to see in order to make some decisions about boundaries that I'm going to hold. Mm-hmm. And that can be a bummer. That can also be really great information, so I can take care of myself.
So that you can take care of yourself, and this is the Libra in me, and also it's more fair to that other person to not hold them to my standards when that's not really. They may say that because they think that, but when we get into these processes, that's when we realize I may see it and they may not yet be able to see it, and for them and for me to hold them to what are unrealistic expectations is not fair to them either.
Well, I may be jumping a little bit ahead here, but like in our circle, what you just said really, that lands with me, because if we're doing a certain type of ritual where only certain people are invited, and then like that is purposely done so that we could have agreements
right, yes,
how people will behave. And there's a certain amount of accountability because these people, we believe, or I believe, have demonstrated that they're willing to be accountable to this level and to this level of accountability. And so it's not really fair if we just opened it up to a new member who has no experience with these, and then they come in and even under the best circumstances, maybe they think they're being helpful or they're, but they don't know, and then they
running roughshod over.
Yeah. And then that's not fair to them.
It's exactly right.
So these, this boundaries and accountability are setting people up for success. And then because we're human or whatever, it doesn't always work out, but then we can address it with each other. That's
why the process is so important, because when things break down for whatever reason, we have a platform to get things back on track. Okay. Yeah.
Or to end the track.
Or to end the track.
Yeah.
Or to step off the track.
Or to step off the track. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And another thing I wanted to voice, because we do have this set up for our circle as something to be used when needed. Oh, it can of course be used informally, but we have it set up as a formal process in case people need that sort of support within our circle.
Yes.
A formal process. And I think it's really important because not only do we have interpersonal things come up because we're humans and we're bumping each other's raw edges, like you said at the beginning, but also I'm just going to add on top of that, we have other things going on too. Like we're a group of women. And boy, I'm going to say for me, I think there's a lot of societal pressure about people pleasing, or don't rock the boat, or, sit still, look pretty, don't bring it up, all these things. And so we're just going to, so I'm just imagining,
stuff it.
So I'm pushing that down, and then maybe issues that these people are bringing in their own experiences, their own previous experiences. Then we have racial things on top of that. And then we have age things on top of that. And then we've got experience and power dynamics on top of that. And and then we're doing magic on top of that, and so you add all of that together and
yeah,
that is complicated.
Yes.
Even under the best circumstances, that's complicated.
Yes. Yeah.
And so even something as simple or complex as this can help at least a little bit to kind of untangle and give that some space to breathe.
Space to breathe is an important part of it. And the space to stop and sit and think, what am I doing? What am I feeling? Because again, that's not encouraged in the dominant culture. We're not encouraged to just sit for a moment and think. We're encouraged to sit and stew, but not to sit and be more objectively, to sit and say, okay, I feel when they, because this is, I'm not talking yet to them. I'm just kind of figuring it out for myself. I feel when they, and what do I want? Damn.
Yeah. Deep
stuff.
I really think it is.
I really do think so too. And I saw that I have a beloved cousin who is really good at this kind of stuff. And granted, all of our stuff is couched in, a smack talk and all that kind of stuff. But still, I saw him talk to one of my other cousins that way. Just really brief. It's kind of like with you with that student where he was just going by and he said, kind of the when you did this, I felt this, etc. And I'd really love to see this. And
I love that.
Yeah, and different ways and different words, but he's kind of like the master of that.
What a skill to
it's a skill. Oh my gosh! Wow. Oh my gosh! He's my younger cousin, and I just want to grow up to be like him. This is one of those topics where there's I think one of the things that we could just pile on are like these wonderful stories about this, about when it works and when it doesn't, and our reactions to it. But I think this is a good place to stop. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. Like, even when it doesn't work, it works. In that it's all data.
It's all information.
Yeah.
It's all information. And what we do with that is one of the reasons why there's 31 flavors. We all have different reactions to that information. Mm-hmm. So our poem today is a poem by someone called Where's Molly?
And I would say that I believe that the sacred is mundane, the mundane is sacred. And this came across my Instagram feed just by algorithm. So I'm really not familiar with who Molly is.
Or where they might be.
Or where she is. But on Instagram, her handle is Where's Molly, and also Adventuring Within. But she had this thing that came across, and it just really landed with me, and I thought it would be nice to share it here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just like the moon, you shall go through phases of light, of dark, and of everything in between.
And though you may not always appear with the same brightness, you are always, always whole.
Thank you so much for journeying with us through these phases of accountability and conflict and vulnerability.
And this is a reminder for all of our Patreon listeners that on March 23rd at 10:30 a.m., we are hosting a Witchy Wit meet and greet. So you can ask questions, just chat, and hang out a little bit with us. And for those of you who would like to join, but you're not yet a Patreon listener, feel free to hop on to Patreon and join us there.
We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our Witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!